The rain was relentless, hammering the cracked pavement of Flatbush Avenue like it had a personal vendetta. Ezra Coleman, 24, stood under the awning of a shuttered bodega, his breath fogging in the chilly Brooklyn air, watching the world blur through the downpour. He'd always felt like Tease on the outside, looking in, waiting for something to prove he wasn't invisible. Ezra tugged his worn denim jacket tighter, his hazel eyes scanning the street for the bus that was, predictably, late. He wasn't supposed to be here, soaked and shivering. But his roommate had kicked him out for the night, another date with someone from an app, leaving Ezra to fend for himself. At 24, he was used to being the odd one out, too quiet, too awkward, too queer in a world that didn't always know what to do with a black kid from Bed-Stuy who loved poetry and dreamed of something bigger. He'd never been chosen, not by his high school crushes, not by his family after he came out, not even by the art school that rejected his portfolio last spring. But then, across the street, through the curtain of rain, he saw him. The guy from the coffee shop. The one who'd been showing up everywhere lately, same subway car, same corner store, same open mic night where Ezra read his poems to a half-empty room. He was leaning against a lamppost, unbothered by the rain, his dark curls plastered to his forehead, a faint smile playing on his lips like he knew something Ezra didn't. His name was Luca Torres, 26, a Puerto Rican photographer with a knack for capturing the beauty in things others overlooked. Ezra didn't know that yet, but he felt the weight of Luca's gaze, like a spotlight he wasn't ready for. Luca crossed the street, his sneakers splashing through puddles, and stopped just shy of the awning. "You look like you could use a coffee," he said, his voice warm, teasing, but not mocking. Ezra froze, his heart doing that stupid thing where it tripped over itself. He wasn't used to being noticed, let alone spoken to by someone who looked like Luca, confident, effortlessly charming, with eyes that seemed to see right through him. "I'm good," Ezra muttered, shoving his hands deeper into his pockets. He wasn't good. He was cold, tired, and painfully aware of how his damp curls clung to his face, making him look like a drowned cat. Luca didn't push. He just nodded, like he understood, and said, "I'm Luca. By the way, I've seen you around. You're the poet, right?" Ezra's stomach flipped. He'd never thought of himself as the poet. Just Ezra, the guy who scribbled verses on napkins and hoped they meant something. "Yeah," he said, barely audible. "Ezra." "Ezra," Luca repeated, like he was tasting the name. "I liked your poem last week. The one about the city breathing. It stuck with me." Ezra blinked, caught off guard. No one ever remembered his poems. No one ever remembered him. "Thanks," he managed, his voice cracking just enough to make him wince. Luca grinned, undeterred. "You headed somewhere? I know a place nearby. Best hot chocolate in Brooklyn. My treat." Every instinct screamed at Ezra to say no. He didn't do this talk to strangers, let alone ones who looked like they belonged on a magazine cover. But something in Luca's eyes, steady and kind, made him nod. "Okay," he said, surprising himself. "Just don't expect me to talk much." Luca laughed, a sound that cut through the rain like sunlight. "Deal." The diner was a hole in the wall on Nostrand Avenue, its neon sign flickering like it was on its last legs. Inside, it smelled of burnt coffee and nostalgia, with red vinyl booths and a jukebox that hadn't been updated since the 90s. Ezra slid into a booth across from Luca, his wet sneakers squeaking on the linoleum. The warmth of the place seeped into him, loosening the knot in his chest. Luca ordered 2 hot chocolates, piled high with whipped cream, and leaned back, studying Ezra with an intensity that made him squirm. "So," Luca said, "what's your deal? You're always alone, always writing. What's the story?" Ezra bristled, but there was no judgment in Luca's tone, just curiosity. "No story," he said, staring at the table. "Just Me? Bullshit, Lucas said, but his smile softened the word. Everyone's got a story. I bet yours is worth hearing. Ezra didn't know how to respond. He wasn't used to this someone pushing past his walls. Not to hurt him, but to see him. He sipped his hot chocolate, the sweetness grounding him, and mumbled, "Not much to tell. Grew up here. Family's not great. I write to figure shit out." Luca nodded, like he got it. "My family's not exactly a Hallmark movie either. Kicked me out when I was 17. Said I was too loud. Too much. Been on my own since." Ezra looked up, surprised. Luca didn't seem like someone who'd been broken by the world. He seemed whole. "How'd you get through it?" Ezra asked, the question slipping out before he could stop it. Luca shrugged, but his eyes were serious. "Found people who saw me. Not the loud Puerto Rican kid. Not the queer kid, just me. You find your people, Ezra. They're out there." Ezra wanted to believe him, but hope was a dangerous thing. He'd spent years building walls, protecting himself from rejection. Letting someone in, especially someone like Luca, felt like handing over a map to his weakest spots. The conversation shifted. Lighter now. Luca talked about his photography, how he'd spent years capturing New York's forgotten corners, graffiti-covered alleys, abandoned lots, people no one else noticed. Ezra found himself talking too, about his poems, his dreams of publishing, the way the city felt like both a cage and a canvas. For the first time in years, he didn't feel invisible. When they left the diner, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets slick and shimmering under the streetlights. Luca walked Ezra to the subway, their shoulders brushing as they navigated the crowded sidewalk. "See you around, poet," Luca said, his voice soft but certain. Ezra nodded, his throat tight. For the first time, he believed he might. The next few weeks were a blur of stolen moments. Luca kept showing up at the library where Ezra studied, at the open mic nights, even at the bodega where Ezra bought his late-night snacks. It wasn't stalking. Not really. It was like Luca had a sixth sense for where Ezra would be. And every time he appeared, Ezra felt a little less alone. But it wasn't easy. Ezra's life was a mess of contradictions. His roommate, Jamal, was growing distant, annoyed by Ezra's moping, as he called it. His part-time job at a bookstore barely covered rent, and the rejection letters from publishers kept piling up. Worst of all, Ezra couldn't shake the fear that Luca was too good to be true. Why would someone like him, vibrant, talented, want to choose someone like Ezra, who'd spent his life being passed over? One night, at an open mic in Williamsburg, Ezra read a new poem. It was raw, about the ache of wanting to be seen, the fear of being left behind. When he finished, the room was silent for a beat too long, and his stomach dropped. Then Lucas stood, clapping louder than anyone, his grin wide and unapologetic. The crowd followed, and for a moment, Ezra felt like he mattered. Afterward, they sat on a rooftop, the Manhattan skyline glittering in the distance. Luca handed Ezra a beer, their fingers brushing, and Ezra's heart stuttered. "You were incredible tonight," Lucas said. "You've got something, Ezra. Something real." Ezra ducked his head, embarrassed. "It's just words." "No," Lucas said, his voice fierce. "It's you. You put your soul out there, and it's fucking beautiful." Ezra didn't know what to say. He wanted to believe Luca, wanted to lean into the warmth of his words. But doubt clung to him like damp clothes. "Why do you keep showing up?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I'm not worth it." Luca's face softened, but his eyes burned with something Ezra couldn't name. "You're wrong," he said. "I see you, Ezra, and I'm not going anywhere." For a moment, they just looked at each other, the city humming below them. Then Luca reached out, his hand resting on Ezra's, and the world tilted. It wasn't a kiss, wasn't even a hug, just a touch, warm and steady, that said more than words ever could. The turning point came a month later, at a gallery opening in Dumbo. Luca had invited Ezra to see his photography exhibit, a collection of portraits called Unseen. Ezra had never been to a gallery before, and he felt out of place in his thrift store jacket among the artsy crowd sipping overpriced wine. But when he saw Luca's work, his breath caught. The photos were stunning, gritty, honest, alive. And there, in the center of the room, was a portrait of Ezra. It was from the night at the open mic, his face lit by the stage lights, eyes half closed as he read. The caption read, "The poet, waiting to be seen." Ezra's chest tightened, tears pricking his eyes. Luca had captured him, not the awkward kid from Bed-Stuy, but the person he wanted to be. Brave. Real. Enough. Luca found him standing there, staring at the photo. "You okay?" he asked, his voice soft. Ezra shook his head, not trusting himself to speak. You made me look like someone worth seeing." "You are," Luca said simply. He stepped closer, close enough that Ezra could feel the warmth of his breath. "I've been trying to tell you that." Ezra's walls crumbled. He leaned in, hesitant, and Luca met him halfway. Their kiss was soft, tentative, but it felt like coming home. For the first time, Ezra didn't feel like he was waiting to be chosen. He felt chosen. The months that followed weren't perfect. Ezra's family still didn't speak to him, and the rejections kept coming. But Luca was there, steady and sure, helping him navigate the mess. They spent nights writing and photographing the city, dreaming of a future where they could both be seen. Ezra's poems grew bolder, his voice stronger, and when he finally got an acceptance letter from a small press, Luca was the first person he told. They stood under that same autumn tree in Prospect Park, the leaves falling around them like confetti. Luca pulled Ezra close, their foreheads touching. "I knew you were worth waiting for," he whispered. Ezra smiled, his heart full. "I'm starting to believe you." And in that moment, under the golden light, Ezra knew he wasn't invisible anymore. He was seen. He was loved. And that was enough.